The 1 p.m. slate and late slate games are done. We're getting ready to roll into the Sunday game, but we're going to get an early look at the waiver wire for Week 12 so you can get a good idea of what players you may want to pick up later this week. In this list, we're going to leave out a lot of those handcuff running backs. You know their name. We're not getting a lot of the running backs getting injured right now, so you're just picking them up as speculation plays. But we got some players who are doing some things on the field today that you're going to want to look at. But before we dig in right now, you need to click that subscribe button right now. We're going to come back at you with more videos on the waiver wire. I guarantee you that. On top of that, we're doing deep dives on these players, and we're using these videos to help you set your lineups. Click that button right now. Stop missing out. The first guy that we're going to look at might have got released back to the waiver wire a few weeks ago. That's Anthony Richardson. He went off today. If you did not pick him up before today's game just to see what happens with him, there's going to be a fight for him off the waiver wire. You can choose to go after it. You can choose not to go after it. If you're good at quarterback, like if you got one of the top quarterbacks and it's a 1 QB league, you're only starting one quarterback in your lineup, I think you're good to stay away unless you're getting ready to roll into the playoffs and one of your rivals desperately need a quarterback and you're up on the waiver wire bidding or whatever on that player, and you may want to do that so they can't get him just in case we have a renaissance here because he can rack up fantasy points and rushing production. He could be a bad NFL quarterback for the rest of the way and be amazing for fantasy football. I am watching him closely. I'm not going to say he's going to go back off, but it's very telling that a player gets sit like this and comes back and has a good game. We will see under a much larger sample size, but I'm highly interested in Anthony Richardson right now. If I'm middling, if I need a quarterback, if I'm sitting there consistently with back-end QB1s or quarterbacks who are averaging like 15 points per game or less, then I'm looking at Anthony Richardson. I also do not want to have two quarterbacks on my team. I also want to be backed up with good stash running backs. So you got to play this appropriately. If you're jacked at quarterback, you're good. If you don't feel like you're jacked at quarterback, you want to play the matchups with quarterbacks, here's another option for you. Taysom Hill. We did a You Need video on him. We're going to do another one this week. There's nobody else there for the Saints to rely on. They're out of players. They're out of players. They're using MVS in the passing game. They're out of players. It's Kamara, Taysom Hill, who looks like TJ Dillashaw in these pictures. I always got to throw that out, but he's getting so much work. He's getting so much opportunity, and you can use him in multiple different ways. And there are going to be games where he doesn't do anything because he's Taysom Hill, and there's going to be games like this. That's just the Taysom Hill effect. But over these last few years, you should come accustomed to that. He's Taysom Hill. He is like a meme player out there. He is the Dogecoin of fantasy football players out there. You are watching Red Zone and you're seeing him carry the ball and you just chuckle a little bit. He's Taysom Hill. Pick him up, especially if you need a tight end. If you don't have like Brock Bowers or anything like that and you need a tight end, just pick him up. Pray to the fantasy gods every week and see what happens. Devaughn, Vele is starting to get work in the passing game. The Broncos are still playing. However, we're hitting here. 4 catches, 66 yards. But Bo Nix is good at football. A very good quarterback here. Lil Jordan Humphrey, 4 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown. Troy Franklin got a touchdown today. Marvin Mims is getting work. The ball is spreading around. We're seeing a carousel effect here in Denver. And usually you see a good carousel effect when the quarterback is stepping up, spreading the ball around to his targets and pushing it. And next thing you know, any given Sunday, a wide receiver can hit from that offense. Bo Nix has went from, we got to beat these journeyman quarterbacks in training camp, to beating them, to being able to start the season, from starting off a little bit rocky but okay in moments, to starting to be eligible for fantasy football rosters, to now getting a carousel effect here. That is a beautiful thing. A lot of people had Bo Nix left for dead going into the season. His draft stock, what people were saying about him wasn't great. We got to training camp, and he was showing it off the goods. We went over that day in and day out, going over the clips, going over what they were saying. 2-minute drills in training camp, lights out, 7 for 7 in completions, doing up against the Packers even in practice. He did that. I remember that. We were going over that. Training camp matters to some degree. We're seeing that with Bo Nix. And these wide receivers for the Broncos, although you do not trust them, we're getting something here. Roschon Johnson was getting work today. And we said it. Roschon Johnson's going to have some games where he does this. It's going to be off and on. If something happens to DeAndre Swift, you're going to want Roschon Johnson. You're going to want him on your fantasy team. You may not going to trust it, but we got another handcuff to look at. We have too many handcuffed running backs. However, if you're in a deeper league, or if you got Swift, or if you want to get invested in this, he does get used in the passing game. We're seeing it this year. We saw it last year. He's getting work back there. If something happens to Swift, who does have an extensive injury history from back in Detroit, this is something you're going to fight with off the waiver wire. If you want to, go get it. However, we got a lot of stashed running backs. Cam Akers is one of them, but he's getting work. We got 10 carries, 12 targets in this matchup. We're getting work in this offense. We're getting opportunities. The thing is, Aaron Jones, they're probably going to have to cool him off a little bit. He got hurt last week, had that rib issue, came back in later in the game. They got to meat shield him with Cam Akers to get him by. And Cam Akers all of a sudden is turning into a handcuff plus. A handcuff running back that's getting a little something each game that you can use in a pinch. I mean, last 3 games, 9 fantasy points, 9 fantasy points, 13 fantasy points, and that's adjusted for this league because you get points for carries and stuff, but he's getting enough workload to where, like, if you're hurting enough, you could use him. And we know he's going to be productive in fantasy for about half to 1/3 of the games if he does have the starting job, but the touches is what matters in fantasy football, and he's in a good offense. Kenneth Gainwell, nobody's really talking about him, but he was getting the work. The Eagles' offensive line is looking good. Saquon Barkley does have an injury history. If I have Saquon Barkley and I'm looking good for the playoffs, I'm going to wrap it up with Kenneth Gainwell with my last roster spot. I'm going to have that insurance policy. I'm not getting dicked over by one of my league mates by them picking him up before the playoffs or if an injury happens. I'm going to wrap that bow on Kenneth Gainwell because he's going to get enough work. If something happens to Saquon Barkley, I'm good to go. And if someone has Saquon Barkley and you're looking to get a handcuff, here's another one. We got 32 handcuffs. We got 32 of them because running backs aren't going down. That is what's happening. Maybe not 32, but we're pushing like 15 handcuffs. Maybe I got to do a rankings video on handcuffs so you can get in order for the season, but I also got to categorize them by lottery ticket because I view them in certain ways. I view them in different asset classes, like gold versus Bitcoin type of deal. Elijah Moore. Look at the targets here. Week 7, 6. Week 8, 12. Week 9, 9. Come back week 11, 8 targets. We get the touchdown. Elijah Moore is going to be a hot guy off the waiver wire this week. If anything, you're going to get targets. He usually gets the short targets in every game. He's usually more around the line of scrimmage, so it's going to be up and down, but the volume's there. Compared to many other wide receivers off the waiver wire, he's very safe when it comes to workload. The Browns are up and down when it comes to fantasy production for these wide receivers, but he's very safe when it comes to workload. We got Pittsburgh coming up. That's not sexy. We got Denver on the road. That's not sexy. We got Pittsburgh on the road. That's not sexy. That is not a good look. However, volume is volume, and you're going to take it if you need it. Kendrick Bourne got out a touchdown today. We're running a lot of routes. 5 catches off 5 targets, 70 yards. But Drake May is fueling a carousel effect, and we're seeing this in multiple weeks now. Kendrick Bourne, Ameer Douglas, and I'm saying these names weird right now, Kayshon Boutte. All of them are running a lot of routes, and all of them are getting a fair amount of targets. Any given week, those wide receivers could go off. We're not to the full effect of the carousel effect, where one's going off every week, but we're getting to the point these wide receivers are getting volume. Drake May's doing a good job of pushing the rock around the offense, and that is a good thing to see. If you're really hurting, pick one up like a Boutte, like a Kendrick Bourne, a Pop Douglas, whatever your flavor is for that week. roll out the dice, throw them in your lineup, pray to the gods. Jonnu Smith, we're getting volume, we're getting opportunities. It is consistent. Reading off these targets, week 7, 7 targets. Week 8, 6 targets. Week 9, 6 targets. Week 10, we got 4 targets. Week 11, we get 8 targets. We are getting volume. We are getting opportunity. That is something you may want to snag for the rest of the season at the tight end spot. Nick Westbrook is scoring touchdowns. He is a touchdown machine. Out of what, the last 5 games or so since week 6, he scored a touchdown in every game, but week 10, he's getting targets downfield. This team is YOLO. This is very hard to trust. But, again, if you want to put your nuts on the table on a player, this is one you could do so with. Christian Watson has upside in this offense. Deep threat city here. Can get fantasy points and bunches. Can also smack it on the floor too with no production. That's what we're seeing out of him. We said this was a guy... We were saying he was a sneaky start going into this week. He was a sneaky start. He hit. We do have some tough matchups going on. However, if you're looking for a wide receiver with a ton of upside, here you go. Ameer Abdullah is turning into a pirate as he ages on the field. Alexander Madison, Zamir White, hurt right now. Don't know if they're going to be back, but if you want to pick up a running back in a situation where they could be seeing some carries, I'm not really advocating for it, but Ameer Abdullah could be a guy if you need a running back in a pitch that is getting touches. Probably if you're looking at a 5-game sample, he's probably going to give you RB2 production at least in 2 to 3 of those games. He's probably going to hit for you with RB2 plus production and about 1 out of every 3 games for you if I have to guess. He's a dice roll even with a lot of touches, but there's another running back for you to look at. But that's an early look at the waiver wire right now, going into week 12. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. One thing for watching. Catch you on the next video.